Understanding Ubuntu in terms of our group matrix. Hi, I'm Louise Fouché from OTGrow. Welcome to our YouTube channel. So here we discuss tools, tips, and techniques and a bit of theory to make you an excellent group facilitator, one in which your clients will make lasting shifts. So today we're going to be talking about our third part of Ubuntu. Unfortunately, Michael wasn't available and we will catch up with him in next week. In the meantime, I wanted to keep on discussing the concept of Ubuntu. One of the biggest criticisms of Ubuntu has been the fact that it's a philosophy and that it doesn't actually work in terms of implementation. But I want to challenge that thinking in terms of the interactive group model. And I want to make use of a group matrix to be able for you to visualize what we mean in terms of Ubuntu as a framework or a guideline for your interactive group model. So I've set up a group matrix over here. You can see on the one axis, we've got the individual versus the group. And in the other one, we've got goal orientated versus process orientated. And so maybe this is a good idea for you to have a look at the way you're facilitating groups and see where are you lying? Where do you naturally incline to go? So if we had to choose or pick a point at this on this matrix for DBT, I would most probably place DBT over here. Why would I place it over here? It's very individual orientated, and even though people are sitting together, it's very much about does the individual understand, and it's very goal orientated. We are discussing this specific goal in this 12-week program on this stage, and this is what we are going to be doing. Wise mind, whatever. And so that it's very goal orientated. If somebody comes forward and says, but that's not really what I have a problem with this week with my family or at work, then that would not be considered part of the process because there's a very set pattern that needs to be addressed. And it's very individual orientated. Can each person be able to implement Wise Mind? And there might be an activity, but often it's done individually. People happen to be together in the same space, but actually, if somebody was there or not, it wouldn't really matter to the process. So on our group matrix, that is more or less where we would plot then our DBT. So it's very individual focused, meaning it's more on the individual side, and it's more group goal orientated, which means on this axis, it is going to be higher towards the goal. If we consider our process orientated, which is often our uh, single medium therapists are often very process orientated, then we are going to plot them over here. If it's a more individual process, in other words, the person has come for music therapy or art therapy as an individual, because it's process orientated, it is low on this line, and it is very individual because it's the only individual that needs to have a look at the process. And so that's very process orientated. If it happens to be in the group and the group process and what the art making of the group is important, then that will be low because it is process orientated, but it is still within a group. If it is within a group, but the individuals, in other words, each person individually makes something and they are going to be unpacking it individually, and again, it just happens to be in a group, then you're most probably going to find it's also going to be moving more towards this side because the group as a part of the dynamic is not really considered. All right, so when we talk about Ubuntu, Ubuntu really gets the sweet spot over here because it is both focused on the individual and on the group. We are holding both tensions. There are times when we ask individual people to reflect on what is their intention for this group. And then we move also to the group side and say, well, what is the intention of the group? Everybody individually can have an input, but where do we want our group to go? And so it's important when we consider Ubuntu as a guideline, it allows us to say, well, where am I on this line? Do I tend to be more individually focused? In other words, a lot of my things, I will make sure everybody gives an answer, and I never allow for the group dynamic, or I never allow the group to reflect on themselves as a group as a whole. Then I am more individually focused. If I am more group focused, then I never allow time for individuals in the group to give some feedback, to be able to shape and I almost want to say guide the group in a certain way. And so the Ubuntu helps us to understand, but both of them matter. And so, as our theme of this year also says, the individual grows as the group gathers. Both of them are important. The individual impacts the group, and the group impacts the individual. And last time I used the example of a pack of crayons, and that is how we implement the thinking and the guideline. But another better possibly way to see Ubuntu is a symphony orchestra. In other words, am I a violin? Then I need to be the best violin I can be in this orchestra for the orchestra to really perform. If I am a piano, I need to be the best piano, but it doesn't help I'm a piano on my own. I need to still be part of this orchestra. And so, as a group facilitator, yes, we are focusing on the unique qualities of the piano or the trumpet, knowing it is a leading instrument that holds the tune, but it doesn't mean we forget that there is still a whole orchestra around it, and that we still need to have the percussions and the string instruments to back that up. So, if you are thinking of Ubuntu in terms of your groups, think, am I focusing on the individual instruments, but I never get to have them play together? I never have that sound of the symphony or the orchestra that really just elevates everything that's going on, that makes each individual instrument really come to its own only when it is within an entire symphony or orchestra playing. So I hope that helps you to understand a little bit more of what do we mean when we say Ubuntu is able to be implemented and a guideline in terms of our groups. Just last word in terms of goal orientated and process orientated, even though that has nothing to do necessarily with Ubuntu, it also allows us to know that we are fluctuating between these two poles. We are holding both of them as well. Sometimes we're very goal orientated when our group asks us, but we have a need to address change, how to adapt to change, then yes, I come in. I have an activity that I present opportunities for them to be able to unpack about change. But it's also part of the group process because the group was able to tell me what their needs are. I brought the opportunity forward. And then we have a look at what is this process towards meeting the goal of how to deal with change. What is the group actually doing? Are they trying to avoid change? Are they artificially thinking they're adapting to change? Meantime, they're not. And that also allows us to hold both at the same time. Yes, we are sometimes focused on goal, but we also need to say, whoa, we way focused too much on goal. Now we need to sit back and hold this group process. Where's the group wanting to go? What is the group's needs, the group's dynamics that are being illuminated in this space? All right, so I hope maybe this matrix would be a great way for you to reflect on how you are facilitating your groups and maybe to make more space in your thinking around Ubuntu. The individual grows as the group gathers. And in the meantime, happy facilitating.